Hello and welcome back to the semi-related podcast. My name is Jacob Eischen and I'll be your host today. And I'm joined by Oliver Jones. Oliver, how you doing this morning?
Very well. You can see the sun shining on me, and I'm enjoying a good Seattle morning.
You've got we were talking before the recording started. You've got your nice manifold cup, you've got your manifold hat, sun
Yeah,
shining on you. I mean, it looks like you've got a pretty good thing going right now.
yeah. It's startup life. You got to have brand. Like that's half the fun is to get a cool shirt and logos everywhere.
Well, I want to dig into the logo a little bit later too. That'll be a fun conversation. But
Yeah.
for now, Oliver, do you want to give us kind of a quick background on yourself and maybe quick intro on Manifold, and then we can get a little bit deeper into it later?
Yeah, you bet. Originally, I like out of college, software engineer by trade. Really loved building things. Is like something like that's core in about me. I started at a company called Isilon, where actually I think it's kind of cool. They built these really large storage arrays that, our claim to fame was a lot of Pixar movies were rendered on them. I worked there for about 5 years, had a really, really good time, but always wanted to go do the startup life. And so I eventually jumped over to Convoy, which was just starting up in Seattle. My old manager was the head of engineering over there. Just was enamored by the brokerage floor and everyone talking on the phones. I thought it was like just very cool experience. So signed on there, worked on all sorts of parts of Convoy from like load execution to, the demand side of bringing in more shipper freight for a full 7 years. Almost pretty close to when Convoys began to the very, very end. There's a lot of stories in there if we want to go into it. And then when Convoy went bankrupt, took it really hard. But it like when one door closes, there's another door that opens. So I was like, I always wanted to do my own startup. So I went and applied to YC. Was very fortunate enough to get in. Called up some of our previous carriers that I had worked with at Convoy, and now spent the last almost 2 years now grinding away at the startup life, and I've never been happier. Like it's been a wonderful, wonderful experience.
Well, I can attest to that. I've seen you out on the road at a few different conferences at this point, and you truly are one of the happiest people I've seen, and it shows whenever you're at that show, out on the road and at those conferences. So you're always out working the room, networking with people, and having a good time. So,
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure.
well, awesome. I wanna dig into that background. So, are you born and raised in Seattle, or how
Not
how
quite
did you end
Seattle,
up in
but
Seattle?
Washington area, for sure. I was born in Spokane, and then I grew up in like Southwest Washington, like Vancouver. Well, not Vancouver,
Yeah.
BC, but Vancouver, Washington. So yeah, that was, and then I came for Seattle just for work. There's a lot of software development going on there.
Yeah, well, that was what I was going to ask is what gave you the tech bug? I mean, being in Seattle, there's probably quite a few places you could have found some inspiration, but what was it that made you kind of interested to go into software engineering, and were there any companies that you were looking at?
Oh, not really. My early part of my life was very much, I didn't care. I didn't even go to. I went. It's a fine school. I went to Washington State University. It's like in Pullman, Washington, in the middle of nowhere. Anyone can get in. I initially was going to do electrical engineering, and I was just meandering around. My parents were going like, "You got to really think about your future," and I was like, "I don't know." I applied to one college, and that kind of followed along for a while. Like Iceland
Yeah,
was the only job I applied to, and I got it, and
you
I
were
was
focused. You knew what you wanted, right?
oh no, I didn't know what I wanted. I fell into it. My friend was like, "Hey, I'm working here," and I was like, "Well, why? I'll work there too." I didn't.
Yeah,
Everyone else applied to like Microsoft and Google and all these other really high paying jobs. So I probably left money on the table, but I didn't really care. I don't know. I was very much fly by the seat of my pants guy. So it wasn't until towards the end of Isilon when I was like, I should really try to think about what I want to do with my life. And that's what led me to, my first real decision was Convoy, where I was like strategic. I was like, I want to join a startup that's up and coming, and I want to get that experience.
yeah. Well, what do they say? The male brain doesn't really fully develop until 25. So sometimes we need some time to make some decisions like that. But
That would about line up for me. Like that's about. about when I make the jump.
Well, let's dig into kind of your switch over to Convoy. So you're kind of finding your way, you're starting to be a little bit more intentional, and you find this startup, and I'm assuming it's in a space you don't know anything about.
Oh
Kind
yeah.
of tell me a little bit about how you got into Convoy, what the learning curve was like, and how you got to know the transportation logistics space.
Oh yeah, it was very much I didn't know anything. I remember I was my first interview, and I'm from Seattle, so things are a little more liberal here. And I saw one of the rooms was called Reefer, and I was like, well, that's a little forward. Um, and I was like, I cocked my head a little bit. I was like, really, guys? But it turns out Reefer is a name for refrigerated freight. So that's
Yep.
how like in the dark I was. Um, and I but yeah, I was a narrow again, like I said, like when I was going in for the interview, I saw all these brokers on the phone, like, trying to get carriers. Because like in the early days of Convoy, there was not a lot of automated matching. So a lot of it was done all very manually. And I just loved the energy. Um, and then as I started to learn more about it, I was like, I really wanted to solve. I remember like this was part of me actually making intentional decisions. I was like, I don't want to go work for a Facebook solving, and what my opinion is fake problems. No offense to the people that work for Facebook out there, but like, so some social media ad tech. I want to work on something physical, like something that like actually made a difference to like the physical economy.
Yeah.
So I love the ideas like if I can make transportation cheaper, that benefits us all, right? Like beer's cheaper, goods are become cheaper, and so if you and what I mean to say is like more efficient, right? Like it's just like improving efficiencies. I don't want to like be arbitrary trying to lower costs for carriers or anything like that. But so I started there, and yes, I learned so much. I started on the load execution side, and that was a wonderful way to start in the industry because I really got to understand what are the issues that you run with from when you're trying to get from A to B, right?
Hmm.
Your tire blows out, you get stuck at a facility, you see the good and the bad, the ugly of both sides of the shipper sides and the driver sides of, drivers tired of waiting. So they drive, past the facility gates and they just dump all their goods there, or shippers just being terrible and like being 6 hours of detention for drivers just trying to wait to drop off their goods. So it was a really, really good intro point into logistics.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about the experience. So how were you kind of learning from this? Did you all have some kind of internal onboarding or training, or were you out there on the phone with carriers? Did you ever get to go ride along with a driver? Like what
Yeah.
was that experience like?
There was no onboarding at all. Like when I joined, like I was like the 10th engineer. I forgot exactly, but it was very early on. So there's no onboarding. So the experience was actually really cool. I never, and this is actually try to emulate it at Manifold, is um, software engineers. We just went and worked with the operations staff. So I literally would just go like sit next to the operations staff because that was like who was handling the load execution part,
Yeah.
and I'd be like, so what do you need? Like that would honestly be the conversations. I would just very much start to understand their processes, how like they manage issues. So I got a lot of autonomy there, which was very fun. And then eventually I started to move into more of like management roles where we got more sophisticated, we got a little bit more crisp in our roadmaps, and we started to build from that way. In terms of drivers, I didn't actually get a lot of experience with carriers until much later long, directly with carriers until
Yeah.
much later in my convoy journey. Uh, but early on, it was mostly just the operations aspect, dealing with the people that are trying to make sure things are getting from A to B successfully.
Yeah. Well, give us a quick rundown of your time at Convoy. Kind of how long were you there, and what were some of the different roles like? I know you just
Yeah,
mentioned you were kind of in more of a management role later on too.
yeah. So after the load execution part, worked on a lot of just cool tech there. Uh, I eventually moved into what we call the demand space. So that I spent about 2.5 years in the load execution, and then demand space. This is where I spent the majority of my time, and so I was Convoy was trying to automate their spot bidding, and so like this is kind of like what Manifold does. And I remember I joined there, and we were having a
We
lot of
call that
issues.
foreshadowing in the
Yeah,
business.
yeah, a lot of issues with our spot bidding. And so I joined, ended up leading a team just like on the integration layer and of like how we integrated with different shippers. And the issue with spot bidding, as I quickly became to realize, is it's all over the place. There's like 20 different platforms. Actually, that's not, there's way more than that. Every single
Yeah.
shipper has their own platform effectively for the most part. Definitely there is sometimes you get like lucky and you're like, oh, all three shippers are on a group of platforms. But even when they're all on the same platform, there's all this nuance between it. And then you have email and it's just like APIs and it's just a mess. And so managing that was actually a really fun challenge. So we worked and worked and worked and built, eventually built, pretty much almost all of our shippers. We had this automated spot bidding that with them, and it became one of the most profitable parts of Convoy. Eventually I was able to take on like more and more parts of like this automation workflow. So not only did I get to experience like the automation from like the spot bidding side, but eventually we rolled that into tender decisioning. I know right now it's soft market. We pretty much accept all contracts, all
Yeah.
contract loads, but definitely that's not always true, right? There's times when you maybe want to be at a 90% acceptance rate, or at the height of pandemic, we were rejecting as much as we could, right? Because there was so much more money in the spot freight. So being able to manage both sides of that is, I think, is a really important part to optimization. And so yeah, like the issue though, and this is kind of like the early seeds of starting Manifold, was I was always be talking to my now co-founder. He was managing one of the teams that was under me that like did the integration part, and we're like, wow, I sure wish we could pay for this. Like, and I know there are some solutions out there, but nothing that really did what we needed it to do,
Yeah.
and nothing that was like more a la carte, right? Like I'm like, hey, I just want this chunk of the automation workflow, and then we can handle the rest. And so that's like when it was first starting, where we're like, hey, we should really go build this. But at the time, we're like, I don't know, we're making like Convoy. We were thinking Convoy was gonna go to the moon, and at that point, like Convoy had only gone up, and we had only increased revenue and raised more and more money. And so we're like, well, let's just keep focusing on this, and see where it takes us.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I don't think you're the only one to think that. I think a lot of people are on that same track. But tell me a little bit then about the decision. So you teased it earlier, this move to apply for Y Combinator. Tell
Yeah,
me a little bit about that decision, kind of maybe the lead up to it, and then we can kind of get into like the experience of going through that. And
yeah.
um,
Yeah, absolutely. So, we'll wrap up the end part of Convoy. I worked on built that spot automation software. Towards the end, Convoy was struggling. It was all very clear. We all knew it. Right. This is the start of the Great Recession, the Great Freight Recession.
and what year is this? Just to kind of lay the land here
Oh,
too.
this is like uh 2023
Yeah.
ish. I think that's right. I think that's I'm not good at dates, so I think it's about 2023. You start
Everyone will
seeing.
kind of get what the market was like around then, though, so that
Yeah, yeah. It
that
was
just puts a
whenever
little
like
flag for us.
it was starting to get bad. You're like, oh
Yeah.
shoot, like this is not good. Um, so we started trying to really fix our cost structure, and as a part of our strategy, Convoy had historically really focused on small carriers. Right, we were trying to aggregate kind of small carriers, owner operators, those kind of types. Maybe 10 trucks at the most would kind of be
Hmm.
the spot. But someone had Jared Taylor, actually, a friend of mine, had a thesis. He's like, hey, maybe we should go after the medium size carriers. Because the medium sized carriers, yes, they don't do a lot of spot freight, and maybe typically they're only doing spot freight for their backhauls. Um, but they're going to have a lower cost structure, they're going to be more consistent, they're going to be better to work with. And so
Hmm.
I joined this team to go explore that. I'm like, how can Convoy better work for medium carriers? And this is where I kind of like put the final piece for Manifold together. I was like, oh, carriers have it even worse than brokers, because carriers all have a bunch of direct spot freight that they can access, right, with their shippers, but they also have a bunch of broker freight that they got to go manage, right? Because they still, even the most efficient carriers that do mostly contract freight, most of them are still, 90%. So there's still 10% of their freight is typically lead spot freight. Again, this will vary. But like in that experience, that's what I've seen. so I started meeting a bunch of, decent sized carriers. And when I say mid sized carriers, I'm talking about like 50 trucks to, a couple hundred, everyone has probably
Yeah.
a definition of it. And I got to build some relationships. And so, I wasn't thinking of doing a startup at that point. I mean, I still had that dream, but I was still very much like, I'm a pretty loyal person. And so I'm kind of like a ride or die, like to the end.
Yeah.
So doing my very best to help Convoy be successful. I knew it was bad, but I was like, hey, like you can, when you're in a bad situation, you do two things. You can like lock in and just make the best of it and see what you can make. Or I guess you can give up, but like, I don't know, what's the fun in that? So
Yeah.
worked to the very, very end. Actually, I have a very fun story of, at the very end, still, just make it, we knew we're bad. My boss calls me in. He's like, Oliver, he's like, can you, at this point, I'm head of all the EDI connections, the spot integration, like all the automated bidding, everything. He's like, can you go shut off all of our spot bidding and tender acceptance? And I'm like, what you want me to do? What?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah. He's like, can you do that? Not tell anyone. I was like, I haven't written a line of code at this point. I hadn't written a line of code in many years. And I was like, man, I haven't written a line of code in many years. I don't know if I can do that. Like, I need to bring in someone. He's like, well, we really prefer not to bring anyone. So, me being Mr. Optimism was like, well, maybe we're just getting acquired by Walmart or something like that,
Yeah.
And so my now co-founder was about to go to some fun offsite with his team. He's like, hey, Oliver, and he was going to invite me. And I was like, hey, Oliver, are you going to go to this? And I'm like, no, I can't go to this.
Yeah.
I got work to do. So I like sharpened my pencil and figured out how to code again. And then went to go shut it all off. So I had everything ready to go turn it all off. And I'm like messaging members from the team. I'm like, hey, how do I shut off all bidding on a shipper? They're like, well, we've never done that before, but I guess this is how you would do it. And
Yeah.
I got everything set up and I'm waiting for that call to like officially pull the switch. We cut the, and eventually I get it like at 8:00 at night. I like get the call word like, okay, we do want you to shut it off, everything. I shut it off. Of course it doesn't work because,
Yeah.
it works like I couldn't test that very easily. So, I then like go and fix the bugs and finally get officially all the tender acceptance and all the bidding shut off. And seriously, like the next morning come in, everyone now knows, right? The whole carrier team is like, well, all the loads have been canceled. Everything's been shut off. Like there's no loads on the load board. So everyone's
Yeah.
writing on the wall. And at some point, Dan gave the announcement that like Convoy was going bankrupt. And it was just a very heart wrenching moment for me. Like I really, really strongly in that team. And I poured 7 years of my life into that company. So it was a really tough time, but we all made the best of it. We kind of had mimosas, went out, drank. What else are you gonna do?
Yeah.
And I was actually extremely fortunate to be kept on in the cleanup crew. So I got to got a few more weeks of pay. I was really, really grateful for that. But I also had the option to go over to Flexport. So for those of you who don't know, Flexport bought Convoy's tech in IP. And that seemed like it could have been a pretty exciting adventure. But at that point, I just kind of lost it. I was like, I put everything out in the field. I have nothing left to give to Convoy. And so instead of joining Flexport, I was like, let me go apply to, I went talked to my now co-founder who was, she's like, hey, do you want to do a startup? He's like, what are you talking about? I was hoping for a few months of rest after that whole escapade. I was like, yeah, I think we have a startup here. Like Convoy went over, like we had this really cool product that we built. What if we do a startup? So we went apply to Y Combinator and it was like late. So it was like way after Y Combinator was like accepting applications. They responded to us really quickly. They're like, yeah, like let's do this. And so I'm like, okay, I wasn't expecting that. So I then go into like the formal acceptance meeting. And he's like, so we'll see you in San Francisco in January. And I'm like, because this is in like November right now.
Yeah.
What, San Francisco? I was like, what are you talking about? Like, so this is kind of my not planning perfectly well coming back in. I was just like, let's go do it. Not really. I didn't fully understand the program.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, like San Francisco. I'm like, well, I have 2 kids. I got a wife. I have a house. Like I can't just pick up and leave. So I was like, yeah, I said yes because I don't know. I was like deer in the headlights. Went and told my
Yeah.
wife, I was like, so what do you think about me going down to San Francisco for 2 months? Actually, I think it was like 3.5. And she's like,
Yeah.
really? Like, and anyways, we all worked it out. She was extremely supportive. So went to San Francisco for 3 months, and what a trip! Roomed with my roommate, or roomed with my co-founder, and started Manifold. Yeah, it was like I don't know, it was quite the experience.
Well, run me through just maybe high level. Get what was your pitch to them? So, I mean, you mentioned you were already past the application deadline. They responded to you quickly. What do you think it was that you put out there that really caught their attention?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but I think it was something to a mixture of like us. We had all this insight from Convoy, and which was in many ways very successful. And so I think that like really helped us because I think a lot of times when people are looking for people to invest in it's not so much their initial idea, it's like their background, like what can they once they get into it, can they effectively pivot to where they're coming. But we also brought what I think is a pretty compelling idea is you have all of this shipper freight and this broker freight, and it's all over the place, right? And so, how can you aggregate it,
Yeah.
effectively for carriers and brokers so they can use it, right? It's we're not a load board at all. Like we're not competitors to DAT. It's like we're the layer that sits on top of DAT and trucks. It's like DAT doesn't have all the loads, right? That truck stop doesn't
Yeah.
have all the loads, um, and so we're really a connectivity layer of like, hey, how do we bring like this connectivity layer so people are not going to 20 different tabs? Like one of our taglines is, you have 20 tabs where all your spot freight is. We bring it down
Yeah.
to, and we just really simplify your life and experience. So that was our main pitch. They accepted it. It also really helped that we already had some customers that were signed up. I had built these relationships with these carriers, and so I called them up. The first one I called up was Cole Stevens,
Yeah.
and which I know you've talked. I think you've talked to him.
Yeah. We're Oklahomies is
Yeah. So I call him up and I'm like, hey, would you pay for a product that would like aggregate all your spot freight into one spot? And he's like, hell yeah, I would. I've been dreaming of that. And I'm like, really? He's
yeah.
like, yeah, I'd pay for it. And so I was like, what would you pay for? He's like, $10 a truck. I'm like, I do the math. I'm like, we can build a business off of that. And
Yeah.
so we started working them immediately. Like we're like, okay, let's go build a product for you, and at the same time, raising that money, etc.
Yeah.
And
So
it's pretty great.
did that kind of feel like the early days of Convoy? Because I mean, I'm seeing a parallel here. Like when you said you first started Convoy, you said you went and sat next to these operators and like, what do you need? Did it feel kind of similar to that, where you were calling Cole or whoever on his team and
Oh
saying,
yeah,
"Hey, what
it's
do you need
exactly.
here?" Yeah,
And I think it's the best thing. I started coding again. I still build a lot of our features, and that's actually exactly what I tried to take. Like, and I hope I can keep it. We're still pretty small, so it's easy for us to keep. But even when we get bigger, having that direct engineer, just the company, just ingratiated with the customer, right, and
yeah,
really understanding their workflows and building what they need. So and that served us so well. So yes, with Cole, we were sitting. I flew down there. I sat side by side with their dispatchers. I remember when I'm trying to also show off, like so one of their dispatchers. I'm like, okay, so what else could we add to this product? And they're like, well, a lot of people have smart lanes. This is really early, by the way. So like,
yeah,
effectively like, you can set up some lanes and you'll get notified when there's loads available. Pretty common tool on most broker load boards and kind of load boards. I was like, sure, let's do that. I was like, what do you want to call it? She's like, well, how about smart lanes? So I'm like, okay, cool. We're going to call it smart lanes. And so I went and built it that night.
yeah,
Then it came back. I was like, what do you think of this? And that's the kind of energy that we try to keep to this day. And I think, you go talk to our customers and we always build a feature for them. Again, we do try to, we have a longer term vision. So we make sure the features fits in with a longer term vision and we
yeah,
don't build a camel. But we always try to be like, what problem can we solve for you? And let not be that company that's like, once you file a ticket, it goes in the backlog forever. But instead, we implement it swiftly, and we really try to like make it like for the customer, right? Like not like my version of it, but like I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Yeah. So so tell me a little bit about the early days. So you kind of had these relationships from Convoy. Like how many people did you reach out to? Like I know you mentioned Cole and Steven Strucking, but
Yeah.
uh, what does kind of that feedback loop look like, right? Because you don't want to build it completely around one company, right? You need to be
Yeah.
able to share the technology across a few different users. Have you guys put together like an advisory board or just
Yeah.
kind of bringing in different perspectives? How is that conversation and kind of how has that shaped your roadmap, I guess?
Yeah. Nothing so formal as an advisory board yet. Um, we really just sit with them and we talk to them like on a
Yeah,
one-on-one basis. And on the very early days, we just kind of go build it, right? Because I remember our very early days, we just wanted 10 customers that loved us. That was like my one goal. I was like,
yeah,
we're not thinking about anything else. We're not so, and we that, and my definition for loving us was they have to pay us something, or like something reasonable, right? Like
yeah,
uh, they have to, because otherwise they don't really love you. If they're not willing to pay for you, we have to pay the bills. Uh,
yeah,
they have to use us regularly, like they have to have strong usage metrics, and just generally like just good, and then also good feedback, positive feedback. So those
yeah,
are like more or less the three criteria. And so early on, we would pretty much build almost anything. That's not totally true, but like if they're like, "Hey, I don't like this. Could you slightly adjust this, or I need this extra filter?" Or we would almost just go build it as long as it was relatively low lift. Um, again, because we're just trying to get 10 people to love us, and we're just trying to get a sense for it. And our thought was like, once we get to that 10 customer threshold, we would really be able to start to better understand broader needs, and we could start to build a more like, shaped roadmap from there. So that was
yeah.
our initial push, was just we kind of did anything. And that's actually taken us, it took longer than I'd like to admit to kind of get those indirect customers that really loved us. Um, but yeah, it was quite a journey. It was like earlier this year when we kind of got to that point. And
Yeah,
then we started building out the longer term roadmap and a little bit more process into it.
yeah,
Even to this day, we still build features. Actually, we just released this testimonial with Christensen Transportation,
yeah,
and this is everything is very, very true. He comes to us and we have like our initial product, which is, you can bid on it, manually place bids, maybe set these automated bidding rules, etc. He's like, what I really want is I really want this match a truck feature. And he describes it to us. He's like, I want to be able to like, for an individual truck, I want to automatically go book it for me. It was more or less what it was. And I'm like, okay. And I just had in my gut, I was like, I knew this is like where I wanted to take the product. And he was sweet. We built it like in a couple weeks.
yeah,
He delivered it to me. He's like, wait, what? I was like, I didn't know this would actually just come to us. And they started using it, and it was like amazing. And I think that kind of mentality around just like, kind of building and seeing what sticks is much more effective. Like, I'd rather build it and see if it works than not build it. And with AI, you can do that so much more easily now. Like, prototyping and trying things out is so much more easier with AI.
yeah,
And we just try it out. And in this case, it was a home run. Like, they were booking dozens of trucks a week on it. And again, these guys aren't people that do most contract loads, but they still have like spot loads. And all of a sudden, there's a guy that didn't really have a job anymore. He's like, well, I used to be back and booking spot loads, but now I don't do them at all. And it also
yeah,
turns out we were making more money because the machine could be a little bit more disciplined about pricing and was looking at way more options. And so they're like, hey, we're making more money. We're not doing it. And like, so again, like, but that wouldn't have happened if we wouldn't have been like, let's just go try it out. Right.
yeah. Well, tell me a little bit about how the product's developed, or maybe expanded. I'll kind of see where you want to take that. So you
Yeah.
had this initial idea of kind of one of these core concepts you worked on at Convoy, but tell me a little bit about what that core functionality is, and then I mean you're already talking about new things you built on top of that. So give me the rundown of what Manifold is and kind of where it's headed.
Yeah. Love it. Yeah. So at the core of Manifold, it's a spot aggregation platform today. So that is, we are taking the spot opportunities from all these different low places and bringing it to one spot. Um, and this is, I do think there's a lot of usefulness in this in itself, but it really is just a basis. It's kind of just like, that's like the foundation from which we're building upon. And then we
Yeah,
slowly over time have added different features that leverage that superpower. So for
yeah,
example, our first feature, and it was bidding. Like, that actually wasn't a initial feature. It wasn't a part of the MVP. You used to be able to just like kind of view all the loads in one spot. So our first feature was adding the ability to bid. That was, of course, very important. Bidding is actually really complicated. Every single broker and shipper has different requirements on what you want to go bid. So it actually ended up being a pretty complicated thing to go build, because some need your truck location. Some want to know the account rep who's bidding on it. Some want to know when the truck's going to be available, by what the truck name. I don't know. There's all these different just
Yeah.
requirements, and every single one's different. And then they have like some require you to bid with fuel, some require you to bid without fuel. So we got that all figured out, and we really got our bidding in a strong position. We can't bid on every single integration. Sometimes it's impossible to bid, but and then we built the ability to aggregate email, right? So we kind of are aggregating all these boards, but again, a lot of spot opportunities are coming via email. So we built that functionality. And then we started, once we had that, we were like, okay, now we can start automating things. And so we built these automation rules that were like kind of very similar to what we had at Convoy, which is like continuously bidding on things like nonstop. That was our brokerage mindset. And then, like, for example, Christensen, he was what kind of got us into more truck mindset. He's like, that's nice for our brokerage side, but we have limited assets. And if I have a truck that's available, I really need to only win one load. And it needs to be very specific. And so that's when we like came up with Match a Truck, for example. So it's really just kind of a story of like building incremental features on top of that core technology. And like what's next for us, is we still kind of, we do have some ideas of like how we might be able to go beyond, the Manifold's core functions, but like we're just not done yet with that. We want to get like farther along in our startup story before we go do anything different. So we want to be able to directly connect to TMSs so we can actually know where the trucks are. And then now we don't even have to you don't have to manually say like, hey, I want to match truck for this load. We'll just connect to your TMS and we can almost automatically do it, right? And just like book those empty trucks for you. So do things like that, or get better cost insights, into help you better like make better bid decisions for the brokerage side. And so just like various things like that, just to kind of like fully complement the feature set. And we're just like still trying to different things out, because we really, again, all I'm focused, like, I really want to bring value to our customers. Like that's all I think every single day is like, how do I make the money?
Well, I think that's goes back to kind of your core principle, right? Of, hey, let's get 10 customers who really love us, use it, and are willing to pay for it. I mean, they're going to be willing to pay for it if there's value there. Um, so tell me a little bit too. I mean, you've now been in the freight tech space for almost 10 years, I think,
Yeah,
right? So
almost. Yeah.
you've seen a lot of different technology at this point. You've talked to a lot of different companies, and I mean, you're working with other providers, other tech companies. Tell me a little bit about what you kind of see on across the landscape, right? Because you're kind of playing in, you're not in the digital freight matching space, but I mean, you're very adjacent to it. You're very
Yeah.
adjacent to load boards. Like you've kind of found this little um, I don't know, this little valley that you're operating
Yeah.
in. So tell me a little bit about what you see working in this space, talking with customers, and where you kind of see the future of this unified ecosystem going
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. I think it's a great question. I one thing I've just learned in the freight industry after 10 years is it's really complex. Like
Yeah,
it's a hard thing to automate. Even I think with LLMs, which I think are bringing some really cool ease of use. We make very, very heavy use of them. But even so, it doesn't, there's just all these complexities. And I think the issue with like even LLMs is, sure, it can make a reasonable decision if given the correct inputs. Well, the key part is, can you give it the correct inputs? Because so much knowledge is just all over the place, right? Like
yeah,
really data is just scattered all over the place, and it's not just all in your TMS. I remember I was talking to this, because we're trying to like be like, okay, how do we automatically go book your loads from your TMS? He's like, well, our load planners aren't putting the driver preferences into it, or they're not putting driver availability into it. And so I'm like, well, like that doesn't matter what kind of intelligence you have, right? If you don't have the information available to you to make the decision, you're not making a good decision.
yes,
And so that is a really hard thing, and that kind of goes into my thoughts about like where it's going forward. Is I think information gathering is going to be really key, and that's actually where I think we come in. Is we're aggregating one piece of that puzzle. It's not all of it, right?
Hmm.
And so we're actually partnering with like load optimization companies and whatnot to go, hey, we will bring a bunch of data to you so you can go help like like make decisions, right? And I think that's like a really core piece of it. And I think long term, we just want to be a data, we want to be a data broker. Like I think that's like ultimately what we want to go do, and or like still offer that core functionality. And so whether we provide, like some smarts on top of it, or whether someone else does, like, actually isn't a huge important differentiator for me. But I think we're offering the industry this like, hey, we have a one-stop shop to access all of my opportunities. And with that, I can now make smarter decisions. I can now you just actually that's kind of simply said. It's like I can now make smarter decisions, and and for like the other tech companies out there, they don't have to go invest an incredible amount of energy and effort to go make all those connections, right? They can go focus on what they do well, and we can go focus on kind of that aggregation part.
Yeah. Well, too, as someone who works in data so much, what are your thoughts? I mean, you touched on this earlier of all of these different shippers have different requirements. You're having to pull different data to provide each of them. Like you mentioned, some of them may want the account rep, when the truck's available,
Yeah.
different pieces. So, what are your thoughts on the process there? I mean, this load tendering bidding process with all of these different companies, do you think it should move towards some kind of standardized process, or do you think that there's value in everyone operating differently? I mean, from your unique vantage point where you get to see kind of both sides of this puzzle, what are your thoughts? And
Well, of course, it would be nice if everyone moved to a standardized process. I think that would save everyone a lot of money, but I just think that's impractical. I
yeah,
think it's practical for a number of reasons. One is there are reasons why processes is differentiated, right? Because different logistics companies have different things they're trying to solve for, right? Like
yeah,
managing a reefer fleet doing ice cream is different than managing a reefer fleet doing produce, which is different than a dry van that does every, like, and I
yeah,
like my point is that all creates like these downstream effects of these different processes. And so I actually am completely at peace with saying like I don't think their standardized processes are going to happen. And
yeah,
I think that's exactly why like we come along and we're like, hey, we're going to accept that the world's going to be messy. It's not getting cleaned up. And so what we're going to go do is we're going to do our best to organize the chaos and
yeah,
provide you a unified experience. And that, like, again, that's something we do for our customers is, again, even though they like maybe do reefer freight, all their shippers have different kind of slightly tweaks and things and TMSs and technology vendors they work with. And so we unify that experience. They go to our board, they go set up our bidding rules, and they don't have to go, oh, well, was Kimberly Clark line haul or reefer? Take your pick of like, ship, we try to unify that experience for them. We try to reduce that mess. So I'm not expecting anyone to get all unified at any point. I would, of course, welcome more APIs and welcome more standardization of data, but like that's just not going to happen. Um,
yeah,
and so to me, it's like an opportunity. It's like, okay, well, let's go solve this and 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 bring everything together. Uh,
yeah.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
with so many different kind of ways to approach a similar problem, have you seen any best practices, or do you have any kind of tips on like do's and don'ts that you've seen from either the shipper side or the carrier side
On like in what specific regard?
on like managing this process? Like, do you
Yeah.
think there is something that you've seen that maybe stands out that works better than anything else, or
I will say this. I will say this is I think people, whether it's using our product or some other way, there's other ways to do it, is that you leverage data for decisions. I think are always come out ahead. It's I think the issue with the messiness, actually, I would say one of the core issues that is hard to work around without technology is the messiness of data. And
yeah,
so it's amazing how many carriers out there and brokers that don't really understand their cost structures and don't really understand what's going on. Now like a carrier, sure, like they understand like how much does it cost to run my truck, but like what I mean is like how many shipments, assigning the right shipment to the right driver, and did I make money on that shipment, and what back calls are available to me, and what's my tender acceptance for this shipper, and how many shipments did I bid on, and did I win any of
Yeah.
them, right? Like there's all these different data things, and they're all over the place, right? That's kind of the issue. Like let's just take spot bidding for example, because that's something I know very well.
Yeah.
Um, you have bids on email, you have bids on a platform, and you have bids on API, like very, very simply. And then you have that times 50. Well, no, it turns out like even some of the biggest companies that we've worked with have no idea what their win rate is. They have no idea, like, I bid on 100 shipments and I only won one. Maybe I should go figure out what's going on, right? Because they don't have
Yeah.
the data, right? Like, it's just like some person going on some platform and like bidding, and then that's times 100 because there's 100 different people doing that. And so they actually have no sense of like the data that's going on, and therefore they can't course correct, right? It's really hard. You're just kind of like, I don't know, everyone's left with their own devices. Everyone has their own little system that they're doing. Maybe you're effective, maybe you're not. And so I think anyone that leverages data to really understand. And by the way, I don't think this needs to be complex. Like I think sure you can add all these PhD doctorate math things, but I think just like the simple, is my network balanced?
Yeah.
Like do I have roughly I have outgoing loads out of Denver to the number of incoming loads in Denver, so I can keep a balanced network. And then how do I refine that? And just again, very basic things. Like this is something I was talking to a customer about. I was like, because I was trying to help him with that, and I was like, well, okay, but you got to get your load planners to go enter that data, like that. It's not. We don't need some bunch of fancy tech to go solve this necessarily at the most basic level. You just have to have that truck driver available data, because then we can go use that to simplify. And it's fascinating to me because some people are really leaned into it. I'm like, amazing. But then you have this whole other class of carrier or broker that is like, I don't know, I don't need to. And you're like,
Yeah.
well, you don't
You
have to.
don't need to, but you
Yeah,
also might want to.
yeah, you might want to go
Yeah.
fix that. Like, right? Like, don't you want to go try to like improve your efficiency and understand what's going on?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think people, I would say people that are leveraging data, I think are going to be the most successful. And I think that it still applies in LLM world, like with AI. Like again, I think AI will change some things about transportation. I don't think it'll change everything. Like at Convoy, we were doing 90% a digital freight match, automatic matching without LLM. So you don't need a voice agent LLM to automate bidding, right? Like that's
Yeah.
actually been done before. In fact, I would say, at least my opinion is like voice agents would be annoying. I think the Convoy experience of like just booking it on your phone is probably a better experience than going calling a robot. but that's
Yeah.
just me. I'm not a person that likes talking on the phone personally. So, maybe I'm biased.
Well, that's another thing. I mean, you've mentioned it a few times throughout. I'd love to just kind of give you an open-ended question here to see what direction you want to take this. What about AI has you most excited for
Oh,
trucking and logistics too?
yeah.
So,
I think um I think what has AI most excited for me is I think we're going to see an explosion of technology. The cost of building, trucking already has like a million TMSs. It was something like I'm baffled by the way, just like sidebar.
yeah.
Like, how can there be this many TMSs out there? Um, and I think we're going to have more. uh,
Yeah.
because the cost of building tech has absolutely went down. I feel pretty strongly about that. Uh, And so, yes, I think we can go and talk about like some cool things like gin logs, of like, hey, like cool applications of LLMs themselves.
Yeah.
And like the voice, like Fleet Ops and Happy Robot, like some of the voice people that are doing, or you have email things, or I would even say we're in the email space, right? We like use LLMs for emails and to respond and all that kind of stuff. But,
Yeah.
uh, so yes, I think that's all cool tech, and it's all, it's cool. Like, and I think it will make differentiators now, like whether I think voice AI will be the right way to go. I don't know. Do I think everything's to be done through a chatbot? Like, I don't know. I think like, I'm of the opinion that like the standard load boards we see today of like how you search for freight is just as efficient as a chatbot talking to a chatbot about finding a load. But again, I'm pretty open minded. But I think where we'll really see some big differences is the amount of technology companies and tech is going to about to explode because
Hmm.
it's so much easier to go build it. So you're going to be able to build much finer grained, like use case specific tech for your problem space. And I think I could see it one day of trucking companies may have one engineer on staff and they go build all their tech, right? Because AI
Yeah.
is so efficient. Like in a trucking company, doesn't need that much, like so they sure maybe have their core TMS or something to use, but then they have like an engineer and or they're using a really small kind of boutique shop, which is like, a team of 5 engineers that has their own company that sells to 50 different very niche reefer companies or something like that,
Yeah.
And my point being is it became way more niche because that same tech that used to take 50 engineers to go build now takes 5.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm expecting just 10x the TMSs, though. I mean, that makes me cringe a little bit. 10x the whatever you want to go do. I
Yeah.
remember, I know this TMS. I'm sure you wouldn't mind this Transport Pro. I met this guy, CEO at one of these startups, and he's like, yeah, I was able to go build my own voice agent. This is a really small. I think he's like 2 engineers. Like it's a really small team, but they're building a world class, like a very good product. And so it's like I don't know. You go look at that and you're going like, wow, I think the world, and I think it's going to be way better for carriers and brokers. They're going to get lower costs on their technology. They're going to get better technology. They're going to get technology that fits more directly to their use case. And I think it's
Yeah.
going to make everything way more efficient. So I think it's much bigger than just voice agents and email automation. I think it's so much bigger than that because while those are niche products that I think will work, I think a lot of the value is in much simpler stuff than that, if that makes sense. It's like, oh, I never had this button before that would do this one thing for me, right? And that actually ends up taking a lot of my time. And now all of a sudden I have this button that was added because I now have a much more smart, nimble, or not smart, much more nimble tech team that it
Yeah.
can do what I need because they're more focused on me because they can be. Yeah,
Yeah. Everyone will have a Oliver sitting next to them saying, "What do you need?"
I think
And
so.
they can go build it for you. So
I think it'll be something like that. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the reason why we're able to do that is because of AI, right? If
yeah.
if we were building tech the old way, we would have we would have had to hire more engineers a long time ago. And 2, yes, I would not be able to go. I just produced a feature 2 days ago, and with AI, it makes it so much easier. And so yeah, exactly that.
Yeah. Well, I think as a barometer, maybe my wife and I just took a vacation. We went through San Francisco, and on that drive from the airport into San Francisco, I mean, it is AI billboard, AI billboard, AI
Yeah,
billboard. So if that's any sign of the times, but tell me a little bit too about how you all have applied it internally. I mean, you've kind of hinted at it a little bit here, but maybe
yeah,
go a little bit deeper on like how you all are using AI in development and
yeah.
maybe any other areas too.
Yeah. So I'd say the biggest area, like, because again, like people, I think most people when they hear AI, they're like LLMs, and they're thinking of like some sort of chatbot or some sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so probably our most canonical example of that is how we handle email. Um, we have our own email agent that like processes all the spot opportunities and normalizes them for you, and then you can go respond to them and that sort of thing. So I'd say that's probably the most canonical example of that. But
Yeah.
I think again, I think that's like interesting and like cool, and of course like there's a lot of splash around that. But I actually think it's like the less innovative
Yeah.
way of using it. Or certainly like there's literally you can't throw a rock without hitting someone that's doing that. Um,
Yep.
is I think classification's a really big thing. So again, when you have all these data normalization issues, is like helping you classify that data, I think is extremely useful. The other though thing I would say that again, I think what as the biggest differentiator is building. I think building the software with AI, I think is
Yeah.
um And again, I just don't think AI is at the point where it can truly like replace humans. Like it just, and I don't know if it will, unless there's like another like step function jump. I don't think it's, so I think it's an augmentation to humans is like more or less my thesis right now. It's a very good augmentation. And sure, like maybe some business ops people will be automated away with like the new voice, but voice has been around for robocalling's been around for a while, right? And so there's still something different about like that autonomous human that has more
Yeah.
context than the AI that really can go make like the decision that I think is like really valuable. So I really think it's all about augmentation. And I think augmentation is often uh, most done by just the standard tech. I think there's a ton of augmentation you can do with like just standard tech. Um,
Hmm.
Again, this is non-LLM, but you can build so much more of that standard tech because of the LLMs. And so again, I
Yeah.
think what we have above um, maybe some of the more legacy incumbents is they I think they're finding it really hard to go build. I'm talking to most of my career has been in big tech, and so well I guess Convoy started, but I effectively called Convoy big tech after
Yeah. You were there for kind of the transition
yeah.
into big tech. So
And so and nonetheless, most of my peers have been deep in big tech, and you talk to
yeah.
a lot of them, and they're having difficulties in really applying AI to go build stuff, right? Like,
Yeah.
and so I think to the effect that you can go figure that out um, is the most important thing. And because again, I think we're coming to this age where there's going to be so much software out there, and it's yeah, again, I can imagine some of the larger carriers if they're tech forward enough. Maybe I'm not talking about the Swifts, that already have their engineering teams. I'm talking like those middle guys that like just go
Yeah.
hire a savvy engineer and they can build all the tech they want. Like
Yeah.
for them, and have it all running, and it'd be pretty affordable, right? And again, I don't think we're quite there yet, like not at this exact point in time. But fast forward a few, not too many years, I think that they like with the one engineer, I really do think they could almost build everything. And like again, like outside of like EDI and like your core TMS, like let's just call those.
Yeah.
But everything else is just like I use someone else for.
Well,
So
it's been incredible. I mean, we've done a couple of internal hackathons, and
yeah.
people will use AI tools to build something over a weekend or whatever it may be. And the amount of progress you're able to make in, even hours has
Yes.
been incredible to build a prototype or a first working draft or sometimes pretty well fleshed out products. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, and I think we're still just at the early stages of it. As we can build in more context and more deep understanding, I think it's just going to get faster and faster. So
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I think that the tool sets also need to come up to speed. Like, right now it's still fairly time consuming to go get everything set up on AWS, but I think we'll start seeing more platforms that you can prompt and it will do most of the work for you. I think it'll be more hybrid. I don't know if you've heard of this company called Lovable, but
yeah,
Lovable is this, you kind of build prototype apps. It's becoming more and more sophisticated, but I think you'll find a
yeah,
hybrid of that and like AWS, like where you do everything yourself, where you like, it gives the person the ability to adjust and kind of control everything, but the AI will do a lot of the heavy lifting for you and deploying new infrastructure. And so I think once that piece gets spun up, then running those
yeah,
apps on top of it that are generated from AI, mostly AI, um, will become extremely powerful and very pervasive uh, in our industry and everywhere. But I
yeah.
think we'll see it a lot in our industry.
Well, I wanted to end with a question for something about kind of what you see happening in the future, but I think you've already touched on it here. I think there is a lot that is coming down the pike here and going to be playing into all of these companies. But Oliver, like we talked about before we hit the record button, I think you and I could go on and on.
Yeah.
So if you want to catch up with Oliver, where would be the best place for people to get in contact with you, or if they're curious to learn more about Manifold,
Yeah,
what
you
what
can
would be the best way for
reach
that?
me at Oliver at manifoldfreight.com. Or just reach out to me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's probably easiest. Just connect me on LinkedIn, and always happy to chat. I love doing things like this. I love just talking. Like one of my favorite things about kind of going into the start land and getting the privilege to kind of be a CEO of my own company, albeit very small company. is meeting other founders, meeting people, meeting industry folks, and just talking with them and understanding their problems and having a beer. I don't know. It's just it's
Yeah.
a true pleasure to get out behind my engineer rock and just like enjoy the world of freight logistics.
Well, like I mentioned at the beginning, I mean that shows whenever you're at shows. Are you going to be out on the road any? Do you have any kind of conferences as we hit
Yeah, a
the
little bit. I'm
fall?
going to be going to. I haven't fully gotten this all baked in. I went really hard on conferences last year and earlier this year, and but I'll probably be at Technovations. I'm going to go to this Missouri conference, this Missouri State Association's really looking for that, and
Yeah.
so maybe some smaller ones, but we'll see. I'll be at a few conferences.
Yeah. We'll be out for be on the lookout for Oliver out on the road. So Oliver, thank you again for the time. And if anyone's listening, I really encourage you go get in touch with Oliver. I mean, even if he's not solving a problem for you, he'll know somebody who is. So
Absolutely.
um, take him up on that offer. So Oliver, thanks again and appreciate the time.
Thank you, Jacob.